Hello everyone, I'm Joey Swanson. Welcome to In Depth with TommieMedia. Civil litigation attorney Jeff Storm's work continues after representing George Floyd's family against the city of Minneapolis. He now represents the family of Daunte Wright, the 20-year-old black man fatally shot by former police officer Kim Potter during a traffic stop. In response to Floyd's and Wright's deaths, demonstrators across the United States are calling for racial justice and systemic change in the way that police are trained and punished in cases involving excessive force. Today, I am joined by Jeff Storms to talk about these two cases and the future of policing. Jeff, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks for having me. Always great to be at my alma mater.
Totally. So the Minnesota State Legislature passed new deadly force standards for police in 2020, but after Daunte Wright's death, they have once again debated changing the state's current policing standards. What changes do you think are necessary?
So I think there are several changes. I mean, on the state level, I think one of the most important things we need to see is eliminating bases for stops for minor infractions that really have turned into nothing more than pretextual stops, right? So when we look at Mr. Wright's unfortunate death, at first we heard it was because of expired tabs, at first we heard it was because of air fresheners hanging from his mirror, and then we hear it's because of expired tabs. So these are two things that should not result in an all-out traffic stop and creating what could be a tense situation. We often hear from law enforcement that traffic stops can be unknown and rife with uncertainties. We should have less of them. We should stop creating these stressful situations, particularly when we see that these situations, more often than not, by a wide margin, are impacting people of color. And so I think ending these types of stops for minor infractions and no longer allowing them to provide a basis for pretextual stops, very important aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is important. And as you stood beside the Floyd family on the day that Derek Chauvin was convicted, what emotions were running through your mind?
Yeah, it was very emotional. I didn't, what I'd say is a lot of the focus wasn't necessarily on me as much as it was the family. And, we were surrounded by so many family members as the verdict came. And I asked them, I said, hey, what are you feeling? Because I feel like hundreds of people are going to ask me how you feel, whether it's doing, CNN or newspapers or, interviews like this. And I thought their feelings were much more important than mine. So I wanted to know how they felt. And over again, we heard relief. And I did share in that emotion because I don't think any of us were prepared for a world where we could see on video what happened to George Floyd and see an acquittal. I don't know what we would tell our children. I don't know how we would have faith in the system. And so even though there were feelings of, maybe happiness is the wrong word, but, certainly there was some happiness and elation that was expressed. Relieved overwhelmingly was something I heard and something I feel like I shared.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and aside from their reactions, what was, or you are now representing Daunte Wright's family, and what has their message been to the community at large?
Well, I think for Daunte Wright's family, I think they were where we all were, which was there's this landmark civil rights trial going on. Surely we would think that police would be acting as reasonably as possible. No one ever could have imagined that we would have something like Daunte Wright's killing occur while George Floyd's murder, right, the murder trial against Derek Chauvin, is being tried, here within miles away, right? So, I think for the family, it was just a very quick reminder for all of us that there is so much work to be done. So even after the verdict comes down, right, we're like, this was really important, but our work is ongoing right now and needs to continue. So that feeling certainly permeated.
Yeah, and speaking of that ongoing work, you said that no decision has been made yet as to whether a lawsuit will be filed against the City of Brooklyn Center or if negotiations will be attempted. What factors will affect when and how that decision will be made?
Yeah, so I just can't get into the strategy aspect of it one way or the other. What's important for everyone to realize is that there's a very dedicated and determined and talented team of attorneys who are ready to prosecute Daunte Wright's killing as aggressively as we prosecuted the civil case in George Floyd. And I think everyone understands that. And then we'll see what types of decisions are jointly made between us and the players involved in Brooklyn Center from here forward.
Yeah, and how is your work contributing to the social justice movement at large?
You really see the multifaceted aspect of individuals who play roles in this. And I'll even take a step back. When I was your age, when I was in college, I was not an activist, so to speak. You wouldn't see me at a protest or demonstration, even though I very much believed in social justice issues. That never quite felt like my role. But over the last year, I've just so greatly come to appreciate what their role is and what they do to hold people accountable. And same for us as civil rights attorneys. Unfortunately, what seems to have maybe not the most impact, but a very high level of impact is financial accountability for the city for the wrongs that are caused. So for us, we have the ability to hold the city financially accountable, which makes politicians accountable to the people who elect them, because there are things like budgets and, programs and whatever else it might be that politicians have to make decisions on and the community is aware of. And so the community, will say, why are we paying this money to, in legal fees? Why are we not cutting this off at the pass and having a well-trained police department? It seems like that money would be better spent up front because we're going to have our citizens aren't going to die unreasonably and unlawfully, and we're not going to be paying civil penalties. So that financial aspect of it is certainly important. And we also have the ability to, sort of force the city's hand to make policy changes, whether it's through an actual ruling with the court or through negotiation. And that's a critical aspect as well.
Yeah, totally. Well, I appreciate you coming back to St. Thomas and joining us today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here.
If you have a comment or an idea for a future in-depth segment, tweet it to @TommieMedia. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the latest TommieMedia videos. Thanks for joining us. With Jeff Storms, I'm Joey Swanson. We'll see you next time when we go in-depth with TommieMedia.